excited about this panel today because we were talking backstage a little bit and we thought, well, what if some people think it doesn't apply to them because they're either not married, not in a relationship, not going to go through a divorce, don't think they're going to go through a divorce. But Jill and I were talking about the fact that this applies really to everybody because we're talking about finances and how to make sure that you know what's going on in your own life. So let's expand a little bit more about that because we have a ton of topics we want to cover with this, but you made a really good point that this applies to everybody, no matter their status.
Yeah, this is an incredible time to be a woman in the world. It's, there may be things that you're upset about, but I've been around a while. And specifically, I want to talk about money and money in the hands of women. I'm going to say this, and it was mentioned earlier, but by the year 2030, it is anticipated that women in this country will own 2/3 of our nation's wealth. We're going to own 2/3 of our nation's wealth. How do we get there? Isn't that amazing? Yeah, women are going to have all the money. First of all, we are more educated than men at this point. More women have college degrees than men. 59% of undergraduate degrees are granted to women. 62% of postgraduate degrees are granted to women. So we're smart, we're getting smarter, and now over 51% of the college-educated workforce are women. So we're in a position to be taking over the white-collar jobs and get paid more. We are also starting businesses at an unprecedented rate. We start them at a much higher rate than men. Women own 40% of the private companies in the country, and there's research that shows that women have much higher ROIs, 35% higher ROIs, and 12% higher revenue than men in venture-backed companies. So, despite the difficulty in raising capital, women are building successful, profitable businesses. The big push is going to be a double wealth inheritance. So women are going to be inheriting not only from our parents, but also from our spouses, either through divorce or through becoming a widow. 9 out of 10 women are going to end up running their own money at some point in their life. That means almost everybody in this room.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that because when you talk about running your own money, it's one thing. When you're talking about being in a relationship and perhaps you're not as aware of what's gone on in that relationship and you haven't run your own money and then you find yourself presented with divorce or being a widow or just not knowing what to do next. How do you handle that, Jacqueline?
So very often people will come into my office, I'm a matrimonial attorney, and they'll come into my office and they'll be in what I call the financial dark, where they really are just aware of their income, they're not aware of the assets that come into their home, they're not aware of their expenses, and so it is incredibly important, and the advice I give to all women is to be aware. Be aware of your finances. There are still, traditional roles that people play, and that's fine, and very often, you will have people that say, well, I'm going to take care, can't hear me? Oh, sorry. All right. I'm assuming everybody heard that part of it. But ultimately, it is very, very important, as I said, for women to be aware of their finances. As I said, you want to be aware of your income, you want to be aware of your expenses and your assets and your liabilities. A lot of women don't pay attention to the liabilities either. And so what we encourage women to do when they come in for a divorce and they're in the financial dark and they don't know is obviously to get a team around them, a team of professionals that can help them. So, often it would be a financial advisor, as we discussed, it would be a trust and estate attorney, an accountant, therapist. I'm a very, very big advocate of that. And to just become aware of what's going on in your world. Because ultimately, when you get divorced, many women want to avoid the topic of money. They sometimes will enter into agreements that they shouldn't be entering into because they just don't want to deal with it. And then that can really come back to bite them. So it is very important to become comfortable with money and do what you can to be educated.
So, Holly, I have to ask you this because I didn't know you, but I heard the title of her book. It was about 2-3 years ago, Back on the Market, and it was talking about obviously real estate, but also being back on the market after a divorce. And I thought it was a really clever title, so I was excited to find out we were going to sit on this panel together. But you say when it comes to real estate, and you have women come in, divorced, single, married, whatever it is, oftentimes they don't even know what to put down on the financial statements that you're handing them, right?
Yep. So whether you're looking in a rental or whether you're looking, especially for a sale, we give you what's called an assets and liability form. And it absolutely makes me shriek when people go, I don't really know. I don't know what I have in stocks, or I don't know what exactly I put on my W-2. But I encourage, whether people are single, whether they're in a relationship, whether they're married, and certainly when they're getting divorced, they should be able to write that really top of mind. To get down to the nitty-gritty, of course, you got to go month to month, but you really need to know exactly what your currency is, right? Money is currency. Currency is energy. Energy is self-harvested. And what we can do with the money when focused. Okay, so money is currency. Currency is energy. Energy should be self-harvested. So what we want to do, whether that's travel, business, just, investing in ourselves or investing in our homes, investing with Jill, she'll grow it to God knows what. It's currency, and you have to know how much fuel we have, how much fuel we are capable of, right? What is the value of a person? What is the value of a home? That's all interpretations. When we up our value of ourselves or our home, it's spiritual. It also is financial, right? Putting money into yourself, putting money into your home in the right ways with the right professionals will enhance that energy, and energy goes out to every single aspect of life. Social, job, romance, finance, it's all there. So that's why this applies to absolutely everybody, even the men.
So let's talk about protecting assets, because that's a big part of this too. There's the earning, but there's the protecting assets and knowing how to invest. Well, I want people to walk away with some actionable. So they say, okay, I listened to this panel on divorce and money, and even though the divorce part might not have applied to me, the money part certainly did.
Yeah, I go back to what Holly was saying is really understanding what you own and what you owe, understanding what is written in your wills and your trust agreements, and making sure that what you want, what you think the outcome is what's written into those documents is critical. It begins by talking about money, right? If we don't talk about money, then it's this ethereal, this invisible thing that's kind of like put to the side. We've got to talk about it. And I always recommend to women to talk with women that they respect, who they believe have a good handle on their wealth. It's a great place to begin. It's also important for you to have an advisor or two, good trusted estate attorney that you can work with, great divorce attorney if you need one. But find a financial advisor who takes the time to listen to you, to help pull out your goals, your values, your desires, how you want to care for your children, how you want to, where you see yourself in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. You want somebody who's going to spend that time with you to help you get to that place.
I talk a lot about midlife on social and just on a lot of different panels, and we're talking about some stats on. And Jill, I think these stats came from you. The rise of what's called a gray divorce. And there's 1 million women divorced a year, the same number of widows. 69% of divorces initiated by women. 1 in 4 occur in couples over the age of 50. Let's talk a little bit about that. I'll start with you, Jill, and then Holly and Jacqueline.
Yeah, so there's a rise in gray divorce. It's doubled since 1990. Gray divorce means somebody that's over 50. And women are like, listen, I'm going to live a long time. I don't want to be miserable. Let me get out while I'm still happy. Or, you know what, the older you are, the kids are kind of gone. You don't have to do it for the kids anymore. And many, many, many more women are financially independent and can take this step. I mean, not to mention Bumble was a big win for a lot of women, being able to see that there's potentially another person. There's reasons that women are stepping out. But I do believe that financial independence is a big part of that. And I think, Jacqueline, we were talking because you have a lot of clients who are female breadwinners. So
I do. So a lot of people, and I would also echo what Jill had said about the fact that, we get a lot of people that come in as soon as the children go off to college. They the spouses realize I haven't spoken in the last 18 years and they have nothing to say to each other. And so you get a lot of push, and it is not staying together for the children anymore and the financial independence. And people just grow apart. I mean, that's a big stage that happens. However, women can be financially, disadvantaged by that because if they've been out of the workforce
It's very hard to get back into the workforce at that age, especially, with technology and, all that changing so drastically. So many people really weren't in the world that they're in now, and they really just can't go back to what they may have been doing before the children were born. So you have a lot of people that, rely on that. The other thing I would say is that, a lot of people think that they're going to get spousal support, which is alimony, which is maintenance, all the same thing. And they're going to get that, and they're going to get to stay in the lifestyle they're accustomed. And you get that all the time where people come in and say, well, I'll just be supported. But I can tell you that that's not happening anymore. And the courts are really changing because of the fact that women are entering the workforce, because of the fact that, there's more independence, and the courts are just kind of going downhill on that. And so it's a real risk to women when they're at that age to re-enter the workforce, not be able to support themselves. Health insurance is a huge thing. I know people that get jobs just to have health insurance. And so it's a scary time to get divorced, but on the other hand, you don't want to necessarily stay married to somebody, in all of your golden years when you don't have to be doing it for the children anymore. So it's a big challenge.
Holly, back on the market.
Oh, God. So Back on the Market is a story about my divorce. It was 19 years ago now, but I had so many people come to me that I wanted to give advice, and in doing so, really tell my story about when I got divorced. So it's really about how real estate mimics life and life mimics real estate. So you got to fix your own foundation. You got to get a therapist, right? Then you got to get rid of things that you no longer need, people, things. Then you got to stage. You got to fix those warping floorboards and all of that. You got to do a fresh coat of paint, right? And then you really got to turn on your lights. Lighting is one of the most important aspects in real estate. And what that means when you're a person is you got to start valuing you. What's important to you, what excites you, what turns on your lights, because we all see it again and again and again. There's a point in a listing in an apartment where you've fixed your product, you've got the windows cleaned, you've done all of these things, and you're at the right price, and all of a sudden all the buyers come out of the woodwork, even though you've been on the market for years sometimes, but you fixed your product and you have that value. And with a person, when you've turned on your lights and you're beaming those lights because you're feeling that connection to yourself again, all of a sudden you become attractive to everyone. Somebody offers you that job, you get that raise, you got 4 people asking you out on a date, and you're like, man, I am hitting my stride. It's because you've connected to yourself. So it goes on about these similarities. And once you see these similarities in the book, you can't stop thinking about them. All day long, I'm like, oh, you're too eager. You're like the guy that's calling at 3 a.m, you're going to get something. I'm not sure it's going to be a ring, right? It's not going to be a ring. So there's all these things about this dance of attraction and investing in yourself, which I say all day long. Connect to your property, because when you connect to your property, sky is the limit.
So I want to ask you this. There's second time arounds too. I went through my divorce. It was about 10 years ago. I got remarried at the age of 50. Some people in the room knew my first marriage. I know my second marriage. So they're very aware of the differences between those two people. Second time around, though, I felt like I was a little bit smarter with understanding my finances. First time around, I wasn't. I left a marriage $100,000 in debt. I'm embarrassed to say. Smart in my career, dumb in my finances. That's what happened to me. Second time around, it was very different. When we're talking about women second time around, what do you see with regard to prenups, with regard to protecting themselves, with regard to homes and how they value homes?
Yeah. UBS interviewed 17 of our family couples, women in particular, who got divorced, and found that the vast majority of them have decided that if they're marrying again, there is a prenup that's going to be signed, right? So we see that. But 97% of the women who were interviewed said that they would have spent more time being engaged in their financial lives together with their spouse. They encouraged everybody to do so. So that's one step. The other thing is, since we're in the real estate topic, you need to understand what you own and you owe, but also understanding what assets, when you're splitting them down the middle, do you want to keep, right? Because some assets might help you and some assets might be a drag. And sometimes that could be the family home. Right? That's a difficult thing because you need a place to live, and most mothers and children want to stay in the family home, but there might be a mortgage, there might be high maintenance, and so sometimes that's a very difficult decision that needs to be made. We were talking about that earlier.
Right. I mean, that is something that comes up a lot. People become land rich and they think that there could never be another home that they could be comfortable in. And as you were saying, very often, I don't want to say I encourage, but I definitely want people to truly understand, because where you're feeling right now, especially when you're going through a divorce, emotionally you feel like your whole world is being uprooted. So the idea of having to move and relocate your children and do all of this just seems so grossly overwhelming that, again, very often women will enter into deals they shouldn't be entering into because the emotional component is so strong. So it is really important, again, if they have a good team in place that can kind of explain to them, like, listen, you will find another home that will be comfortable. Your lights will turn on, and you will be in a place where you can connect to another home that might just be more financially feasible for you. And that's something that we really encourage people a lot, just to kind of be looking big picture and not just be living just in your moment. Live in your moment for 5 years, live in your moment for 10 years, which is a big ask when people are going through a divorce because you're just so wrapped in your moment of today. But it's important to look forward.
Just to add on that, that's if you find yourself in that situation, vast majority of women leave their husband's financial advisor after they get divorced. And 70% of widows leave their husband's financial advisor within the first year of his death because that guy never talked to me about anything except for the kids. So imagine divorcing. You want to do that. You need to find somebody who is going to spend the time to walk through those goals with you, to codify those goals and say, we're going to get there. How can we get there? How to pace it out? And so, for example, if you need to sell the house, you need to sell the house. You might take the balance from that and invest it in an asset that's going to provide you income, as opposed to owning an asset where you have to shell money out every month. Depends upon the situation. It's all personal.
And four walls can have ghosts, right? It needs to be exercised. You're living in memories. And so for my own experience, we were speaking about that. When I moved after my divorce, which, we were married for 7 years, I was young. But when I got those 4 fresh walls, when my name was the only name on the deed, all of a sudden, my entire spiritual life lifted. And I was like, I don't have any bad memories here, only good stuff. So, there's no one rule. And that's why kind of a group has to look at it and help people decide what's right and as you were saying, what helps and what hinders people's moves forward.
We have a great panel with different backgrounds. We have 2 minutes. Can you each give a takeaway to how a woman can protect themselves, whether it's divorce or just, where they are right now?
Well, Holly used this expression that money is energy. I say money is power, and you need to be in a position to understand how to use that power. So I encourage all of you, if you're not already, be engaged with what you're doing in your personal finances, whether you're alone or in a relationship, and just drive that home. No matter how uncomfortable it is, find girlfriends who do it successfully, ask them how they do it, and then take that back to your home.
Yeah, absolutely. And know your assets and liabilities. Write them all down. If you have a mortgage, know when it's floating, and really work that out.
Yeah, and I'll just jump on the money is. I'd say money is freedom. I mean, at the end of the day, to be able to make decisions that you want to make because of the fact that you have the financial capacity to do so, I think is very important. And to protect yourself if you are entering into marriage is prenups. I would definitely recommend a lot of prenups, and I know people see them to be as unromantic, and I'm planning my divorce, but when you speak about talking about money, if it's done in a proper way, in a respectful way, it can actually be an excellent way for people to start having that difficult conversation about money and what it means to you before you get married, because you don't want to be doing it after.
I really appreciate it because I think it's so important to talk about these things. I didn't grow up talking about it. I learned the hard way. I think a lot of women often do. So I appreciate you sharing your expertise with all of us today. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.